Welcome back to the Doing Good Show. I'm your host, Andrew. Today, our guest is Martin Clark, beloved former boss of mine, current CEO of Allia Impact, an organization dedicated to helping impact change makers grow their reach. So that means business support, impact startups, social enterprises, charities, organizations that are trying to change the way business is done so that it actually makes the world a bit of a better place. Ideally. Martin, could you give the audience just a little bit of a background on yourself and tell people a little bit about why you agreed to spending time with me on the conversation?
Well, we worked together for 5 years and it was a blast, so that's one of the reasons.
Thank you, appreciate it. That's
also,
what we do, call in favors.
Your commitment to social enterprise, social impact was fantastic, so yeah, it's great to share. But my background, I guess I was a struggling and probably going to fail academic who did a struggle to do a PhD up in Sheffield back in the 90s, looking at unemployment. And I knew I wasn't going to be happy in academia. So I was thinking, well, what do I do instead? And I had some connections with a think tank in Cambridge that was interested in how you improve relationships in society in a whole load of different contexts. But one of them was business, one community, NHS, prison service. And they had an idea for a project to tackle unemployment. And I was absolutely passionate about unemployment. Hated it. There was a whole thing in the 90s, the early 90s, and the general election around, unemployment being a price worth paying for low inflation. That was a sort of debate that was going on. And we had 3 million unemployed. And I just thought, these are people's lives, it's...
A price worth paying.
Yes,
wow.
That was a phrase that was used by the then Chancellor of the Exchequer. So that was really kind of motivational for me. And I thought I must dedicate my life to creating jobs. So some interesting parallels with what you're doing now. But anyway, it's a massive topic. It's an impossible thing to tackle in isolation. You need sort of government policy, you need businesses, you need the third sector, you need councils all on side to do anything meaningful about this thing. And you've got the global economy context as well. So I knew it was a tall order, but I thought we've got to try something. So I joined this think tank in Cambridge in '96 called the Relationships Foundation. And they came up with a project called City Life, which was about, could you create a financial product that would help people invest in their community to create jobs? And that's where it all began.
Wow. I mean, the idea that you could create some vehicle to get people to come back and invest in their community, I think is something that's sorely needed. And I think it's quite frustrating in today's society that there is, the idea that you can invest locally is not really feasible, right? And so, I mean, in navigating that journey of going from, okay, I want to solve, this issue around unemployment. I want to help people get out of poverty, and then I want to help people create solutions that allow them to not just give back, but like truly invest in their community. What was, I guess, how did that turn out? That first part of that phase, that idea of building a financial instrument, right? I mean, what was that like for you?
Well, we had to do a lot of primary research because there was very little of this around. We joke now that we were doing crowd-funded social investment before anybody used either of those terms.
Not a joke. That's good.
We were trying to get mass participation from the citizens of a city, a community, in putting their money into meaningful stuff that made a difference, and trying to persuade them to do it, ideally interest-free. So it was a big ask. So it had to be mass funding because otherwise we wouldn't have enough money, and it had to be some sort of social impact investment. Otherwise, it was just like anything else, any other commercial type thing. There were ethical funds around, even in those days, but they weren't very exciting. There was no form of social investment you could meaningfully make. But we did hear of one organisation that used zero interest bonds to invest in the developing world, based in Newcastle. Great organisation called Shared Interest, and they were very generous in allowing us to use their model, both their model rules of their Community Benefit Society, as well as their principles of their bond offer, to use it for UK urban regeneration, because it wasn't competing ultimately. It was very marginal competition. And that shows a sort of generosity in the sector, I think, the social impact sector. People are often, not always, but very often willing to share good practice and just want to do good stuff. So we essentially copied their idea, and after that it was, how do you get an entire city to agree on a single agenda that has to go into a legal bond prospectus and be signed off by a lawyer. Our lawyer, who's long suffering from Leeds, who's been with us ever since and has just introduced us a brilliant opportunity in Leeds, showing the sort of full circle thing about sort of relationships and long-term working together. But we got that legal bond prospectus agreed between 4 different parties who were going to use the funds if we could raise them. Then you have to work out how you raise them, getting the businesses involved, getting citizens. It was mainly about building human relationships between individual citizens or families and the projects that were going to be funded through the bonds. It wasn't so much a corporate thing. It became a corporate thing later for a while. But it was about, can we get people to invest in people through our vehicle, through our intermediary vehicle. It worked well enough, £800,000 in 1999.
That's pretty big.
Was probably the equivalent of maybe 2 or 3 million now, and I've done it in real terms. It wasn't quite enough to recover all our sunk costs of marketing and everything else. So we learned some very valuable lessons there about, how much do you sink, how much do you risk before you're going to be in difficulty. But it worked well enough to make some meaningful impact in Sheffield on social housing construction, on business startup for people who couldn't get a loan from the bank or too old for the Prince's Trust. And for the first time we heard about community enterprise. There was a revolving fund that was being set up by a community enterprise unit. And
Okay, I'm going to pause you there because right now we've covered a lot of technical ground and I want to cover some bases really
Fair enough. I thought you were going to say it's an advert break.
No, it was like, no, yes, advertising break. Our sponsors are, somebody want to sponsor? So first I want to hit the technical stuff a little bit. So where you started, right, was the academic side of the equation where you just finished a PhD. How did you get schooled up on such a very technical world so quickly, right? Because as I understand it, your PhD is not in finance, right? And you talked about this whole world of community investments. You talk about bonds, bond prospectuses, getting parties together and organizing it and then working with legal help and then coordinating all that. How did you get started? How did you figure that part out first before we even talk about the rest of it, right? Because that's just such a hurdle.
If I'd known that was what we were going to try and do, I wouldn't have even taken the job, I don't think, because it was one step at a time.
Okay.
You solve each problem as it arises, and we had some great help as well. We had a guy who later became one of our trustee directors, who worked in the City of London and helped us with the financial structuring. So because I knew nothing about that sort of stuff. I knew about the theory of unemployment and job creation, but I didn't know anything about the reality of it, how you start businesses. So we had an enterprise agency as part of our partnership who took all that side on and talked us through. If the funds come in this form, we can match them, then we could leverage them with bank money against the this reserve that you've raised from the fund, and that means you could put more money at risk for longer. So they just said, "Don't worry, it'll work." So I didn't, I needed to understand it to a certain level.
What? But why were you comfortable to take that risk? Like, why did you jump into something that you didn't know that there was enough? Like, you didn't have the background in it, so why, other than your desire to solve that issue, did you go down this journey?
Well, I think that was the desire. It was that we need to create this thing so that every city, and we started in Sheffield back in the late 90s, very high unemployment still, and a tradition really of sort of municipal socialism where the council had done everything for people. But the situation was desperate and they were a lot more open-minded about creative stuff like this. So it was a great city, high identity, quite well bounded, so it doesn't blur into massive conurbation, but quite a lot of wealth as well in some parts of the city. So we thought, well, this is a good place to trial it, but we have to try and make this bond thing work. So we'll see if this works. If it does, we already had the then chairman of Greggs the Bakers in Newcastle saying, if it works here, we'll take it to
Greggs.
Newcastle. And he helped us with a bit of funding. So I guess it's, you see an end goal or a desirable outcome and you're looking for ways to get there, which usually, if you're doing it right, involve asking for a huge amount of help from other people to make it work. There's no way any individual like me, particularly one without particular skills either, but even somebody with the skills on their own wouldn't be able to do it. You need the people around you, a team. We had a team, we were part of a think tank which gave us a support base. So we were a startup coming out of it, but we weren't a lonely startup with one or two people with a big idea struggling. We had a bit of resource around us and a lot of connections, which helped.
I'm almost imagining you in that Liam Neeson's line from Taken. I don't have a particular set of skills and I don't have this knowledge, but you will figure it out. You will figure out how to build a solution for it. I think this is, one, that is very much startup energy, right? I think people don't apply startup energy to social enterprises and charities in their mind, even though I think the founders of these organizations very much demonstrate that hustle to kind of solve problems and to get in there. And I think there's a theme that you've brought up several times, is what you said. You've wanted the community finance solution that you were creating to be one that was based on relationships, right? And I think you've also modeled that in your way of working, of saying, how do we actually get people together to create a solution? Because as you said, right, you didn't have the expertise. You had to find other people who had that within themselves, and then you could say, hey, could you help us? And I think people are not so comfortable with asking for help in today's society in terms of these dynamics. Do you think the social enterprise space has higher relationship strength or connectivity as compared to any other industry, or do you feel like it's just horses for courses, like people just do their thing, and within your space you're willing to help each other? Or are you more willing to help other social enterprises and charities because you feel like, we're all trying to do something to make a difference?
It's hard to judge, but I think, from the sort of relationships we've built with our alumni, people who come through our programs over the years, we try and go the extra mile ourselves in helping people, but then those people often want to help give back, sometimes to us, but sometimes to others. So you do get a bit of a sort of peer-to-peer thing going on if you build that sort of ethos. And that's broader than just social enterprise, as you know, and we might talk about the jargon of social enterprise a bit more. But
you've written a book on it.
Social entrepreneurship, just to add another term in there.
Yeah.
But so not all social entrepreneurs set up social enterprises, as you well know. They can set up all sorts of programs, initiatives, game-changing ideas.
So maybe explain a little bit social entrepreneur versus social enterprise in your mind, just from your perspective, because Martin wrote a book on it, literally.
Very long time ago, 2009, The Social Entrepreneur Revolution. Still available.
It's on the shelf as well here somewhere. I just have to remember where I put it.
Still available from good second-hand outlets. For about 1p, I think.
I paid more than 1p, so I've exceeded the market rate.
So a social entrepreneur is somebody who wants to change a social or environmental problem by using some sort of business-like principles at the core. So it does express itself often best through the vehicle of social enterprise, so business established for social good, basically. Okay. And there are other technical definitions around social enterprise which can get a bit boring, but they shouldn't be about profit making for private gain. They should be about reinvesting in their mission, in their growth, and they should ideally have a lock on that mission so that they don't sort of drift into becoming profit making or go off the rails in some other way. So yes, most social entrepreneurs would set up a social enterprise to try and effect the change thereafter, whether it's solving an environmental problem or creating jobs or helping refugees or young people, all the gamut of things. Mental health problems is another common area that people try and respond to. But yes, you can get social entrepreneurs who are also trying to sort of change the system in some way. So they're sort of campaigning about something, and it would have some sort of business-like expression where it ends up being some sort of organisation or a vehicle that
like an organizing vehicle
to change things.
To gather people together to try to advocate for some kind of political change or regulatory change based on the collective energy of a group of people.
And just setting up a charity as well could be the act of a social entrepreneur if you've got a real passion for something. But yes, where it best aligns is where it's a social or environmental issue with a business type solution, I think.
Do you think all things have a business type solution in those spaces?
Well, I used to be more optimistic about this. I don't think now it's not the only way of doing things, but I think we need, given that we live in a capitalist world, essentially, I think we have to accept that now.
I think so.
Then I think we have to operate within that sort of framework, and it's about using the best principles of investment and fundraising and using business revenue generation models and serving customers, all those sort of basics of how you do business, but using it to solve a need. And so somebody has to pay to solve that need. It can't always be the person who's experiencing the problem, particularly if they're low income or some other problem there. Sometimes you're looking for a contract with a council or a government or some other payer, the NHS or something.
Well, I think what you just described there was an interesting reflection also of Allia's history, right? Because in many ways, Allia navigated a variety of different challenges and also has a very diversified business model now as compared to 20, 30 years ago when you were talking about what you started off with was community finance, right? And community finance can get very technical, but it's also branched into more classic things like real estate. So maybe talk a little bit about like the evolution of the organization, because I feel like in many ways people get stuck on doing one thing as their only answer. Allia has managed to become quite a reputable, sustained organization in the social enterprise space where most fizzle out within a year or two, right? It's been 20 plus years for Allia. Yeah, exactly, right? So this is a massive undertaking to get any organization to survive, let alone a social enterprise. Talk about that journey a little bit.
So it was born out of some sort of desperation, as well as, if I was being more generous, I'd say sort of foresight and, sort of strategy. But essentially, the dream was that these bonds would go national. They would cover the whole country. They would operate every year, so that wherever you lived, you could have a bond coming up, and you'd think, this year's theme is, this aspect of tackling local employment needs, or other broader things as well. But we got to the point where Sheffield did 3 bonds, Newcastle did 3, East London did 3, Wales did 3, but all the other places we tried, we had endless conversations with most of the cities in the country and some counties and regions. You couldn't always get that agreement I was talking about earlier to align around a single package, putting it in a legal prospectus, having all the partners really lined up, and then raising the money successfully. You couldn't often get off first base to get that agreement. Sometimes you could start and then you wouldn't raise any money, and it was hopeless. So our vision sadly failed, and that's partly my stubbornness about the bond had to be zero interest. It was because you couldn't squeeze enough funding for the key projects out of the fundamental mechanism, which was to lend money to a housing association. If you started offering an interest rate, you needed to raise twice as much or 3 times as much, and we weren't confident it was going to work that way round. So the bonds were beginning to be a struggle and probably would have failed anyway, but then the credit crunch arrived, 2008, and that absolutely killed it because there was no interest available to give away. So fortunately, by sort of early 2005-06, we had found, winding back slightly, we'd seen a lot of great examples of business centres, incubators for small businesses, people starting something to solve their own needs, as well as social type businesses, around the country, in Sheffield, Newcastle, and in East London here. So that became part of our sort of portfolio plan for the bonds. But in the end, we ended up thinking, well, why don't we do one in Cambridge? And we've managed, just by luck rather than judgment or skill, finding a very good moment in the funding history of the country. Brilliant. And there were things called the regional development agencies that were a sort of Labour government innovation. And they had a lot of money, particularly at year ends, for capital projects. And we
government inefficiency.
Well, no, I'd say yes, maybe there was a slight misjudgment that particular year. I don't want to blame anybody. I'm sure these people are long gone now.
Blame them and thank them.
They don't exist anymore, but some of the individuals do. So thank you, those who are out there listening to this. We managed to buy an old community centre, essentially, with a grant, which meant there was no risk involved. We hadn't borrowed the money. And we had a vision for creating a social enterprise centre for Cambridge, which is full of business centres doing high tech and all sorts of med tech, biotech.
It's Cambridge, of course we have high tech places.
But we didn't have anything for social change, and that was the big gap. So we thought, let's try and create this thing, and a lot of people got behind it. And it could have been fantastic on that site, but we got planning problems and opposition. So there's another thing you have to navigate your way through or round. Bless them, yes. So we didn't build that, but we sold it to somebody else, made a profit on that, rolled it into a future site. Did a lot of meanwhile space in the meantime, this thing of using temporary buildings for a year, 2, 3 years.
Like an abandoned hotel, if I remember correctly, right?
Abandoned office warehouse thing where a hotel was going to be built. So one of my ghosts is under this hotel building in Cambridge. 4 or 5 different interim buildings until we finally had a site that we could buy in the north of the city near the science park, and assembled all the funds through grants and bonds we issued to local companies to fund this building, and rolling in this money we made from the sale, and another grant from the European Regional Development Fund, and all that together enabled us to build a £7.5 million, 35,000 square foot business incubator, which was social and green businesses. And I knew by that point, that was a 6-year journey, admittedly, but we'd done a lot of good stuff in the meantime. I knew that we were going to be okay because we had that asset, and I know we've got some borrowing on it. It had to be repaid, and still some of it has to be repaid, but it can be rolled forward. I knew we'd be safe as an organisation at that point, but all the way up to that point, that whole sort of 99 to 2012-13, when the building opened, we could have folded any point in that journey, any given year.
Why did you stay in the trenches? I mean, it sounds like you must have been doing 19-hour days, 5 hours of sleep. he's in a family at the same time, doing the work. Like, why did you
There's a
stay?
lot of there was some, hard work and long days and long travel to some of these far-flung places where we're doing bonds. When we started doing the Cambridge project, it was a bit easier because it was at least on the doorstep. But it's the addiction of sort of once you've got a thing, that you're getting to grips with, you want to solve it, and you've got to keep going. Initially, that was the bonds. We've got to make this thing work, and then it was clear it probably wasn't going to, and then it was decisively killed, thankfully, by the credit crunch. I think otherwise I'd probably still be trying to do those now.
Going to Greg's. Let's do another bonds, please.
So maybe that worked out okay. But once we got the building thing going, and that property is quite fun in some ways. It's got its painful aspects.
Yes.
But when you really get into it, you realise what you can do if you get assets and how you use them for the long term. And we're trying to obviously house people and help people who are starting or growing their social or green business broadly. So that was the next level of sort of goal/addiction. This has got to be done, have to find a way to do it. And I probably went a bit AWOL at times, slightly unreasonable, we've got enough money to start, surely the builders will start now. And I had to be told by construction experts, no, you need to get another 10%, 20%, all that kind of stuff. There were some painful times where we were postponing construction start date and big things like that they were pretty stressful. So, but I have found that unless I manage my own energy and well-being, you get run down.
Yeah.
So I've learned to manage that over the years, which means looking after yourself, getting enough sleep, being sensible, having other interests. And I think one message today would be, to social entrepreneurs, look after yourself. Yeah. Don't burn out, because if you do, then you're no use at all.
Yeah, at least in that social enterprise. I think burnout in the space is not terribly uncommon in the construct of, like, someone's on a career and they're doing something and they face a challenge or an obstacle. You personally are pouring so much energy into whatever career it is that you're in. It doesn't surprise me that it happens more in social enterprise, simply because I feel like there is a heavy level of personal investment, right? You personally deeply care about something, because otherwise, why would you be in a space that is, I don't want to say chronically underpaid, but like, in the grand scheme of the commercial priorities of the world, social enterprise and charities are hard work for more non-financial return. And I think that struggle of finding balance in the space is something. I just talked to someone yesterday who was telling me that, I've been doing this for 3 years now, and I'm so done. Yeah. Right. And I totally understand, right? Because I think for all of us, we have to find and reprioritize and retarget ourselves as we go through the journey. And it sounds like in some ways, the Allia journey, because of its almost bucketed eras around, okay, we went from finance to now looking at business support and space, that it created kind of rejuvenation points in itself of sorts, right? Like, you're like, oh, this is a pivot. It's a different problem now. It's a different issue for me to focus on. It's a different challenge. And
it's a good point.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think pivoting is common in our world, isn't it? Yeah. That can be the key to success. So I guess it does rejuvenate you. We know several social enterprises we've supported, one that we've invested in, where they pivoted several times. Is it three? Is it only three now?
3 or 4 pivots, 3 different names.
Sean, if you're out there, no. But that can partly be about purely commercial strategy, but personal rejuvenation around that as well. This could work now. That is really exciting. So you're right. There's been those phases. We're in a phase at the moment, which is, can we relentlessly focus on business support, to make more social impact business start around the UK, and it becomes more a national agenda again, which we had a national agenda before. We then sort of slightly retrenched. That's right. Yeah. And then we're growing again from there, from that point.
I think the retrenching is a necessary cyclical process, right? I mean, like, every organization needs to take stock, figure out how they can make a difference and how they can go about it. And I think that's an inherently commercial decision. And I encourage, I think, people who are in the more traditional commercial space to think about how they can apply some of those practices to issues that they're passionate about, right? Because I think very often we end up in a situation where we have people who come in and they want to do good things. And they come from a commercial world, right? And so we're talking about, like, trustees, advisors, board advisors who come in and say beautiful things about, like, here's how I want to spend my time. So I think it's amazing that those people bring commercial skills to the table. I think it can be a little frustrating when they don't get grounded in the impact challenges and how the organization works, because it's kind of like having a consultant from McKinsey come and say, hello, you need to do this thing. Here's your PowerPoint deck. And you're like, that's great, man. But like, I don't think you know what the hell's going on here. How have you adapted to challenges over time? And how have you found, like, I guess if you were to look in hindsight, what would you have possibly done differently in that journey? Because, yes, bringing in people, or no, maybe we needed more people, maybe we need less people, maybe we needed a different approach. Talk about some of the challenges in retrospect, right? Because things are going good. Can't have always gone good.
Yeah. I think we're about where we are that I hope we'd be sort of 15 years ago. So it's taken twice as long to get where we are now.
Always does, doesn't it?
And it's worth saying that the bonds never quite went away. But they've come back now, and we have a whole division that does bonds on the London Stock Exchange
Right,
and
so
other
sometimes about timing then.
financial arrangement. So a little bit different from how it used to be, but still social impact focused, which is amazing. Nothing's ever totally wasted. You can always reuse that experience. So that's good, and that makes me feel better about some of those sort of periods of time, or whether I wasted 8 years of that part of my life.
It's good that you found a solve for that.
I think so, because I have to try and justify why did I stay doing this for essentially 30 years now, nearly. And that's because it had these phases that you've eloquently described, and new challenges every time, and there was never an opportunity, I thought, to do something better or more interesting.
Okay.
So that's good. But what would I have done differently? I think the bonds we could have done better. There was a point where the government was taking an interest in what we were doing. About 2001, we were about 2 or 3 years into this journey, and we had some success, particularly when it went to Newcastle, and lots of big companies started investing in a big way, and suddenly it was a corporate CSR bond, as well as some citizens as well. And I think the government thought, whoa, this is really interesting, and if we can get more of this money flowing, we can solve a lot more social problems. Maybe the government might deviously been thinking, well, perhaps we don't have to put so much money into it ourselves. I mean, who knows what people were thinking. But it was still a good thing to have companies and citizens engaging in their community, putting their money in, and then following up with interest, going to visit projects, becoming volunteers and trustees and so on. I think if we doubled down on the bonds, worked with the government at that point, I could see a different trajectory where we would have become a different kind of social investment organisation. But I didn't have the skills, the vision, the connections at that point. We had just embarked on the big London bond that didn't go as well as we hoped, that resulted in us nearly going bust. I think that was the first time of our 2 or 3 times we nearly went bust. And that's when Tim, our then chief exec, came on board and sort of took us in. He was very much a businessman and knew how to sort of keep things running. Yeah. And that was very important. Otherwise, I think we wouldn't be here. He's now our chairman, of course. So could we have been a different social enterprise, social investment organisation? Possibly, if we had different vision, different connections, different background experience. I think if I'd been more of an investment money person, I think we would have gone down that road. But because I'm more of a generalist, I couldn't see the road at the time, and we missed an opportunity possibly with government backing.
Would you have wanted that?
I don't know. It's just in terms of what you could do differently, because we never had enough money to do any of this stuff. It was always begging.
Is that kind of like the perpetual state where it always broke no matter what?
Yeah. So I don't think we ever had any particularly really good alternative options from what we were doing. We got into property as fast as we actually could when it came to it, and that was
still
a positive.
A 6-year journey as well.
Yeah.
That's wild.
I know. It's frustrating how long things take. I mean, we're now managing to do it a bit faster now. We've got sort of more resource and more experience.
4 years.
Yeah, something like that. But yeah, it's a different approach. A lot of people think I need a building to do my thing, and I often advise them not to, because it can become a huge distraction, an albatross, millstone, whatever, around your neck. So you need to think very carefully about whether property is the right solution. But for us, it was, because we were trying to be a business support. So yeah, that was good. Could the property have been done faster? I'd like to think we could then have become a social impact property organisation in a big way. Like the ethical property company or something, where it's that's your thing. I think we've always kept our options open, and now we have these 3 strands. So we've still got the business support, we've still got the properties, we've still got the bonds division, and they all link together to better or lesser degrees. Particularly the property and the business support, of course. But I think, we've now diverse. We've got enough legs to our stool, 3 legs, really.
Good.
That mean, particularly in the business support side, we still can't get people to really pay for the support we provide. They're not in a position to do so. And if we started charging them, we'd have a very different market, much more limited number of larger, high-growth businesses rather than a mass startup.
Yeah. So, in other words, for people who are maybe not so familiar with business support, meaning you're contrasting kind of like how the tech startups typically work, where they're like, you've got to be the best of the best, and we're going to make billions of dollars off of you because, you know, we own a small piece of equity in your company, versus organizations that are a little bit more commonplace, that are a little bit more, well, not commonplace in their impact, but commonplace in their, like, you know, size, scale, and this kind of thing, right? They're not outstanding unicorns. Rather, they're the everyday who are trying to make it work locally.
Local social entrepreneurs. Or, but often impact entrepreneurs who have got a big idea, but they're not ready to be a unicorn startup yet. You know, they need to start the journey. We try and help them start that journey, don't we? So, yes, that sort of stuff has to be paid for by somebody else, really. So that's been typically councils, but hopefully increasingly corporates who buy into this vision. So you talk about the kind of support and advice you get from experts earlier. Sometimes we find that corporates who have got, you know, really brilliant staff can provide really good mentoring services because they've been through all this journey themselves at some point, and they've got particular expertise in HR or marketing, governance, finance, excuse me, and they can, you know, bouncing ideas off as a mentor if you're doing it in the right way. You're not misleading people. You're really helping them, boosting them.
I think one of the interesting things that I find with corporate volunteers or corporate mentors is that
there's often this gap for the founder to be able to know what stuff to take and what things to apply to themselves, right? Because obviously the corporate mentor is working within a different context, they're working with different experiences, they have structure, right? And most of the time founders don't have structure. And so I think the magical sweet spot is when a person takes the time to be thoughtful about what it is that the corporate person is trying to convey around structure and their expertise, whether you, like you said, finance, HR, etc., and apply that structure to their own social enterprise. Because I think it's very hard for people to marry that up. And the people who best leverage advice and founders and these kinds of things are able to find the middle ground of some kind of expertise or some kind of guidance. How would you, I guess, how would you now, in my opinion, expert seat of being someone who's been through social enterprise, built something from the ground up, seen it get to an amazing point, what kind of advice would you give to social enterprise entrepreneurs or founders or people who want to make a difference in choosing to jump into this kind of career, which is clearly fraught with struggle, ups and downs, very rewarding moments, great successes, really painful challenges, almost bust 3 times?
You have to be passionate about the thing you're trying to do. And often for social entrepreneurs, it's come from personal experience, either themselves or family member who's had a particular illness or problem, or something they've seen in the community that they've just got to, they find this passion that they have to do something about it. So that is a massive motivator. If you've got that, then you've got to sort of try and follow that path. How you personally navigate that in your own household economy, if you like, whether it's just you as an individual with a family, particularly if you've got kids, a different level of challenge, and you have to sort of work out, you know, how do you start that as a side hustle, part-time? How do you gradually go into it? How can you raise funds from somewhere that gives you that cushion, that runway to get started? That is different for everybody. I was extremely lucky with hindsight. I didn't go in as a founder social entrepreneur. I wasn't even the founder of Allia before, you know, what it was called before, City Life. You know, somebody else had the idea, and I'm pleased about that in a sense, because I wasn't the person that then everybody had to look up to keep it going as, oh, he's the founder, he's the originator. I was carrying the torch, without a doubt, for a lot of the time.
Still now, people, when we're in Cambridge, people know you as Mr.
Well, yeah, no, fair enough. That's probably just longevity, isn't it? But I think if you are the founder and you're passionate, you have to be a bit careful not to get so obsessed that you become difficult to work with. So
there are plenty of personalities like that.
So keeping grounded, and if you have got family or friends who are able to do that for you, that's pretty useful, or a mentor. So be passionate, go for it. If you have that thing, don't have a regret where you say, oh, actually it'd be safer to carry on working at the bank, or you know, as an accountant or whatever you're doing. If you feel you need to go and solve something for your own good as much as anybody else's, just do it. Try and find a way of doing it, but don't do it to the extent of damaging yourself, your family, or becoming an impossible person. Because I have known a few founders who, you know, we all do. They're so
I
obsessed.
know some ridiculous
Yeah,
folks.
they don't listen to any advice. They're stubborn. They're difficult people.
You know what's ironic is that in the big, massive tech startup world, it's often those really obstinate, difficult persons that seem to be the ones that get showcased on media. It's really weird.
Yeah.
And I don't know, and actually, those also tend to be the ones that have massive blowups, like WeWork, right? You know, a personality, obviously, Adam Newman, cult, right?
Yeah.
But also at the same time, yeah, but still billions. And actually, he's probably still a billionaire. You know, he's cheekily made his way into, you know, creating this behemoth. And it's interesting what the commercial system
That's true.
rewards. But also at the same time, I think going back to your point earlier about relationships, right? It's something that you mentioned both in the advice that you give to social entrepreneurs, right? Like don't do this at the detriment of your family or whatever, right? Like it's clearly a relationships priority. But I also think in social enterprise, relationships are what facilitate the continuity and the momentum of the organization. Because otherwise, you know, what is it that you're relying on, right? You're not as commercially competitive as Amazon. You're not commercially as competitive as, you know, a bank or what have you, right? Like the reality is we're doing something here for a priority on relationships and a priority on engaging with people in a connected way. And it sounds like that has been like throughout the entire journey for you.
Yeah. There's been some great people. You know, that's the only thing that's kept us going, and occasionally, including you,
I'm the great people.
definitely. But yeah, times when we had to fall back on people who I remember walking to a board meeting and I had to make a call to a friend who was willing to lend us 5,000 quid, that was enough to keep us from the board from having to shut us down at that meeting. You know, falling back on people like that, and some people don't know a friend who could lend you 5,000 quid. In theory, he didn't even have to. He just had to say he was going to, and that was enough to stave off that decision. So there are extreme cases like that. But yeah, all the small things where people encourage you to keep going. If you're trying to do something good, I think people often say that entrepreneurs will help other entrepreneurs, particularly if they've been successful. They will give back because they know how hard it is for anybody on that entrepreneurial journey, but particularly where there's a social purpose to it as well. I think people do try and help wherever possible, which is great, fantastic. Yeah.
So there is a inherent optimism in the nature of people to be willing to help and to give and to participate. Because I think if you go in with that mindset that people are bad and people don't want to help, then you close quite a lot of doors into making your social or your organization work, right? Because otherwise it's just you against the world, and that's
But you quickly find out the ones who are going to be helpful. And not everybody does, but you don't have a right. I think some social entrepreneurs, another mistake some people make, so maybe it's a bit of advice, is just because you know yourself that what you're doing is really worthwhile doesn't mean that everybody else does as well, because there's countless other people trying to do similar things or even solve the same problem in a different way. So you have to sit slightly light to it and be humble, because you don't have a right to somebody's help or grant from somewhere or help of the council. Why aren't the council helping me with this, that, or the other? You've heard it millions of times.
So many
times.
But somebody will help you if you communicate it in the right way.
And if you're persistent, right? Because I think one of the challenges that people forget, or I guess one of the things that people don't realize, is that sometimes showing up on a consistent basis is enough to lend legitimacy to your idea or thought, because people are like, oh, actually, they've been around a little bit. They're still working on this problem and they've not given up. There is a certain level of credibility that comes with that, I think.
Showing up.
Very, very cringe, though, isn't it? Though you're always there. You're like, hi, yeah, I'm doing this thing. Hi, yeah.
Yeah.
Am I?
Oh dear, you're sounding a bit jaded. I've got to that point where I've probably done that hustling enough, really. So it's time for somebody with new energy.
I wouldn't say I'm too jaded about networking, right? But I do recognize the energy requirement that for some people it feels quite taxing to continually show up and to continually be there, right? Because I think, you sometimes get the idea that, I need to be doing the work as opposed to doing the talking, which is a tricky one, because actually, let me ask you that. How did you balance doing the work and the talking? And how do you feel about that process now, right? Because I think there's an element of doing the work that's required and demonstrating that there's something to talk about, but also you need to be out there telling the story, getting people to get on board. Because if only the people you work with know about it, then what good is it, right? So how did you find that?
Well, it's changed over time because we're now more specialised and we've got more staff members, I guess, helping on different things. So it can free you up. You know, I'm more free now than I was 10 years ago, say, when it was smaller. And you're multitasking all the time. But there's still, too much when you say talking. I mean, fundraising, asking, trying to connect with different people. That's frustrating, but will always be part of the journey, unless you have a business that really does, have a strong revenue stream. And obviously, we've got some different revenue streams within the group that help. Not ones that we entirely have to work on ourselves, but even within our own little part of the organisation, we need to get more self-generated revenue to be insulated against shocks, external shocks.
Yeah, and there are plenty of those.
So that is where you have to sort of be out there and at events and trying to just find the right people and get, share something which enables them to think, these people are good, they're trying to do something, maybe I could help them. If I can't help them directly, I could introduce them to somebody, and that's how a lot of this stuff works, really. Make time for it anyway.
Make time for it.
One of the things that I think about is that I know that you're a very humble and kind individual when it comes to speaking about your own work that you've done. And I think I would like to ask the question of, like, what are you, like, outside of your family, because I know that you're pride and joy, what are you proud about? Like, what are you most proud about for the organization over the years? And, I think you've done incredible things, and I know many people think you've done incredible things. So if you were to just put something out there, what's the thing that you're most proud of for this journey?
Well, you're very kind, but if I'm allowed more than one thing, it's that we're still going. That's one. The second was when we became sustainable and had an asset. I think 2013, Future Business Centre opened, and I could sort of breathe a sigh of relief because I knew we'd be okay. Ultimately, if push comes to shove now, we could sell that building. Let's hope we don't have to. We have other buildings that we manage, of course, but that's the main one that we own. So I'm very, very proud of that building, and hopefully, because it's made of solid concrete, it will be still standing after a nuclear war. I can still be proud of it. I'm proud of the bonds that we made something work. It was an uphill struggle, and it shouldn't really have worked even as well as it did. I wish it had worked better. And I'm proud now that we're at the point where we're ambitious enough to have a national strategy to start more social impact businesses and grow existing ones, and try and make a difference to the culture. We're a catalytic type of organisation. We don't do all the front-facing stuff ourselves. We're not the people who go and do the social entrepreneuring on the ground. Those are the people we're helping. And I think we can help more people do that nationally and just tweak or redirect the purpose of business in this country should be more about making a positive impact. All businesses should be making a positive impact. Some set out to make a specific one. We should be celebrating those, helping those, and getting the big businesses of this country, supporting them. And I'm not yet proud of what we've achieved on that, because there's so much further to go, but we are creeping northwards. As you know, we've opened
literally
so London, Cambridge, Peterborough, Nottingham, buying a place in Leeds that should open soon.
Amazing.
We could become a national organisation and make a proper impact on the purpose of business in the UK, and that would be, I'd be very, very proud if that happens, but I should be looking back from afar, from a distance, I think, on that one.
Well, I hope they make that Cambridge campus the Clark campus. That would be great. I would really love for that to be the case. They should do that, honestly. I think you should get a building named after you. Everybody, in some secret pocket of their heart, was like, wouldn't mind a building named after me.
Well, the kids used to call some of the different buildings we had, over times, including the borrowed ones, City Life Towers. The Clark Towers, maybe.
Yes, I love it. That sounds good. That sounds really good. We can add another C to the Cambridge campus. So I think you slightly alluded to this, and of course, if you don't want this in the show, that's fine. But it sounds like there might be next adventures coming, right? I know you're not the kind to sit there and do nothing on making the world a better place. What's your thinking, and what are you thinking about, and what ways can I guess people think about the different phases in their careers as being new adventures, and what can they make good use out of it?
It's a new phase coming. It'll be 30. By the time we get to August, it'll be 30 years with City Life / Allia and its predecessor founding period. So that's time to move on, get the carriage clock or whatever you get these days.
Is a carriage clock the thing that sits like this?
On the mantelpiece, yeah.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
We should totally make one.
I don't want one. Anyway, sort of things people get for long service, you know.
Yeah.
But time to do something different with my 60s, which will then be upon me. Bit of travelling, bit of recovery, I think, from the grind will be necessary. Some volunteering, maybe, with Beck, my wife.
Yeah. The best part.
We're both ready for some sort of a change like this. And yes, we'll then rock up somewhere up north, we think, buy some rambling old building, do it up, maybe run social enterprise workshops.
Yes.
So hopefully coming soon to
open
to work and whatever. Yeah.
You'll be the first we will put you in as a plug.
Yeah,
as soon as it's launched.
Advert, thank you. So there'll be something, it'll be a good year before we rock up there. But something that's still helping people do social enterprise, get connected with the local social enterprise scene in that location, TBC. And ideally just find people to connect with and help and support. If I can earn a little bit of money by doing that, would be great. But not
just to keep the bills going.
Preferably not full time. That's the goal. So a bit of rebalancing, I think, for the 60s. Well, there's still some energy. Yeah. But I guess the other piece of advice, a bit boring, isn't it? But none of us know how long we've got, and we lost a lot of our parents me and Beck in their 60s. So we're kind of thinking, well, we should use our 60s while we can and carry on making some sort of difference.
I'm sorry, you're not allowed to leave the planet until many years from now.
I try, but we don't know, do we?
No, we don't.
We don't. Unfortunately, that is true. It is an unpredictable life, isn't it? Well, we don't have to finish there. We can keep going. So I think one, to take away from that, right? The idea that your career is not defined by these particular modes, because I think right now people would see you as Mr. Allia, genuinely, right? There is no doubt that if someone says, "Oh yeah, I know Martin," because I can bring this up any part of town, part of Cambridge, and people are like, "Oh yeah, I know him," right? And that has been a huge component of it. But I think also this demonstrates a little bit of that willingness to jump and take risks, because you started your career going from an academic into an organization where you didn't end up doing a lot of academic work, right? And that's a huge jump. That's a huge risk that you took.
And then obviously
that you stayed with an organization that almost went bust 3 times. Clearly is a side of resilience, right? And I think this next phase also shows that you're not confined to this one particular identity of who you are as being, I have to be Mr. Allia or I have to be this thing. You're taking a chance to move in your 60s, right? That's actually pretty unusual for most people. Most people rock up in a single house and they stay there for the rest of their lives, Or
retire to the seaside or something like that. We're not doing that.
You could do that if you wanted, if you like the seaside that much. a second and a third retirement.
I'm not retiring now. That's the thing.
That's good.
That's good. I think that demonstrates a value that I think most people really respect in a lot of people, because I think most people are afraid to take big leaps that feel like they could really disrupt the status quo and disrupt their lifestyle, right? Because the whole notion of people, right? There's this recruiting company called Escape the City, right? Which is built on this notion that you leave your corporate job and you go find an impactful organization that lets you feel like you're more connected, which is a fascinating phenomenon to have in the world, that we're like, you know what, quit your corporate grind, do your thing. And I just wanted to highlight to people that, even within the social enterprise space, right, you're leaving an organization that you've been at for so long to go discover a new path, right? And there was obviously some level of exploration that's still needed in that next phase, and you're willing to take that.
Yeah. Well, I'm lucky to be able to do it financially. Just about. We need to work to some extent, so we're not minted or anything. But also, I think it's the responsible thing to do to hand things over while there's, while it's going okay, and while there's time for me, but also to rejuvenate it again. There's a different way of rejuvenating the organisation, different leadership and so on.
Yeah.
So I'm optimistic about that, and I think hopefully it's much more exciting future than it would be even if I stayed. Yeah. So you don't need to big me up too much, because I might be holding things back.
You might be.
You might be.
So
that's true. That's a good point, right? Yeah.
And I'm happy to take that chance. I think it's in a good place, but it's time for me to let go.
Yeah. That's good. I think most people don't realize when they should let go. And I think the opportunity to allow someone else to step into the seat and then shape the journey for their own, to their own perspectives and challenges and understandings of the issues at hand is a massive step for any organization. And I think what you and I expect of an organization will always be different than reality, simply because that's not how we would have done it necessarily, right? And that's an okay thing, right? Because in many ways, this is the next era, the next generation, and that's what creates that longevity of impact. Is that you've trained up people, you've taught people, you've worked with people, and you said, you know what, over to you guys.
Yeah.
I'm out, kiddo. And I'm very, very happy that you're on that adventure.
Thank you.
Yeah,
that's great.
no, it's great. I think there's so many cool things that you've done in your career, and I think that it's wonderful that you've had both ups and downs, right, through that process, because I think it makes us more human and more relatable. Do you have any final thoughts on what you would anything that you want to leave with the audience before we leave? Because I think I'll put one question in there, and then you could shape it. What do you think makes meaningful work?
Interesting.
Right. What is meaningful work? What is a good?
Well, I've been very lucky to have what I think is a meaningful job for 30 years that I honestly thought would only last a year or two, and then I'd have to go and find another one, which hopefully would be meaningful. But I think the meaningful work where you're able to do something that helps other people is an incredible privilege. I mean, a lot of people are in that sort of position if they're working in the NHS or other caring professions. You're helping people. Mm-hmm. Hopefully the positive side of that outweighs the negatives of whatever context you're in, pay, ridiculous hours, and burnout, and all that.
Yeah.
But so I've been lucky in that, and I think the double meaning we've had in our profession has been helping other people find meaning and purpose in their startup or their growing venture. It's almost too much, really. It's almost like purpose and meaning squared. But it is, if you have a cohort of 10 or 15 bright-eyed startups who are themselves social entrepreneurs of the future, and they're excited, and you're helping them make progress towards their mission, that's multiplying stuff. I mean, they don't all succeed, of course, but hopefully some of them do and grow and thrive. The process of being able to help those people is incredibly beneficial, I think, and an amazing privilege. So if you can get yourself into that position where you're making a meaningful difference, that's where your meaning and purpose will come from, I think.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think I will add one more thing to the final wrap up. If you were to think about some of the next speakers that we had on this show, right? So we have people that are coming from all different walks of life. What question would you ask of them that helps them reflect on their career, or helps them reflect on why they do what they do, or just challenges them a little bit? What would you ask that next person?
Well, I think if it was somebody who's been around in an organization like me for a little bit too long, it would be, are you sure you're still in the right place? Or where are you most effective? Are you most effective where you are, or is there somewhere else you should be? But I think we all need to ask ourselves, where are we most useful?
Yeah.
I love that.
I think if you can be useful in your work, that is part of the meaning thing as well, the purpose. So, are you still the right fit for what you're doing? And if you're a founder particularly, or if you're running a larger organization, then, have you got to the point where you're still the best person for that role? Or is it time for you to hand it on to somebody else who can take it to the next level?
That's really good. It weirdly reminds me of an FT article that says all of our best and brightest are going to the city.
Which is a concern, right?
Yeah.
Because
Until they escape the city.
Until
10 years later.
The circle continues. Where people actually, are the best people going to solve
issues that we need.
Yeah.
Right?
We need to intercept some of those and turn them into social entrepreneurs. But then some of the universities that are producing these people do have social enterprise activity going on.
Yeah.
So, some of them spend their year in community context,
changing things,
and then that can become addictive at that point for them as well. So we don't despair.
No, we are ever optimistic. I think that is one lesson that I learned from you through our 5 years. I love you, and I really appreciate every moment that we've had together, and thank you for being on the show. And
likewise, ditto. Thank you, mate.
Appreciate it.
All the best.
Boom.
Boom.
Done.